Hey guys, today we're going to talk about what are statistics. And to start, what we want to do is we want to differentiate between what statistics are and what a statistic is. So statistics is a discipline. It's a branch of mathematics. Most people think of it as a way of dealing with numbers, and we're dealing with numbers to try to understand the world and provide explanations and model different processes about the world. A statistic is slightly different because a statistic is a measure of something. So it's a piece of data that's measuring something about the world. So to differentiate, statistics are a discipline. It's a way of reasoning about the world. It's a way of trying to model the world around us, whether it's something about nursing or the medical field. Scientists use it in the lab to study different reactions. And then statistics are obviously used in economics to measure economic growth, measure income of different households, or the impact of different policies as well. A statistic is just a number that represents a characteristic of a population. So an average can be a statistic, the minimum is a statistic, and so is the range or the variation, so how different the population is in terms of something. So to give you an idea of how statistics is used, I recently went on a trip with my niece to Yellowstone, and she asked me what I did, and I told her I teach statistics, and she didn't know what statistics were. So I explained to her that if you see that buffalo over there, there's a lot of different ways you could describe the buffalo. So you could say, how tall is it? How much does it weigh? You could ask, how fast does it run? How many kids does it have? And those are all questions that sort of you can answer with a number. And so we played this little game of statistics using, the bison or the waterfall in Yellowstone, or even the geysers. So how much water does it spew out? How often does it spew? How many gallons does it spew off in every minute? How many trees are in Yellowstone? And so there's a lot of different questions you can ask that involve numbers. Something else that you could ask is, well, what color is the bison? And she thought that was particularly odd because a color isn't a number, but you could assign numbers to the colors. So you could say 1 is brown and 2 is yellow and 3 is red. And then those numbers would represent what color the bison is. And so that's what we do with statistics, is we use numbers to try to explain the world around us, or in this case, just Yellowstone. So it's useful for you to learn statistics. So consider, for example, you were going to a party this weekend and you knew 3 different parties that you could potentially go to. The average age in party A is 17, the average age in party B is 22, and party C is 75. So just knowing what the average age is doesn't tell you about the specific people that are going to be attending, but it does give you a general idea of who is going to be there. So the average person is going to be 75 at party C. You can see that that's an older party, whereas some party that has an average age of 17 means it's a much younger party, and a lot of the people attending there are going to be under the age of 21. And you can figure out which party you want to go to looking at those statistics. Right? Statistics are particularly useful only if there's variation, right? So you need a variety of different people going to the party to get an average age. If everyone is 17, then the average age is going to be 17, and everyone's going to be the same. Right, so statistics is really only interesting if there are differences in the world, and that differences are what we're trying to capture and understand and explain with statistics. So once we have what we want to study, we go out and we collect information on it, and that's what's called data. So data is just the information. If we're collecting data on buffalo, then let's say we have 100 buffalo, we can record their weight and their height and what color they are, whether or not they're male or they're female, and then we can use that data to try to understand the bison population or the buffalo population. But really, this is useless without understanding why we're trying to study this population. So for that, we need to understand the W's of a data set. So who is it that we're studying? Well, we're studying buffalo, right? What is it that we're studying? Their height, their weight. And then we would also want to know basic characteristics about when we collected the data, where, and why we collected it as well. So those just kind of put it in context. But the two most important aspects are the who and the what. So the who are the individual observations. So if you're implementing a survey and you're asking people about their age or their income level, the individual respondents, those are each observation. That's the who that you're studying. If you're running an experiment on animals and you're treating some of them with, let's say, a drug, and you want to see if there's a difference between whether or not that drug works, each individual animal would then be an experimental unit, and that would be who you're studying. The what then are the variables. So if we're studying bison, again, things like height and weight, those are what's called quantitative variables, and they have a units attached to them. So here you can see height is measured in inches, so anything with a distance. Weight is measured in pounds or in kilograms or grams. Income is also a quantitative variable, so anything again with the units attached to it. The other type of variable then is a qualitative, or what's also called a categorical variable, where the answers fall into different categories. So for example, we talked about male and female being categorical. And so we can assign numbers to those different categories, 1 for men, 2 for women, and the ranking or the order of those numbers don't really correspond to anything. They just identify which gender we're looking at. Race and ethnicity, the same thing. So for example, if you wanted to study a student population, so you could go out and you can ask students about their height and their weight, and then their gender or their year in school. So if they're freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, that would also be a categorical variable. The last type of variable I talked about, the years in schools, that is what's also called an ordinal variable. So freshman, sophomore, junior, senior is 4 different categories, but if you number them 1, 2, 3, 4, it represents more schooling. So it's ordinal in that it's ordered. Another example of an ordinal variable would be something that's called a Likert scale. So here we see an example where we're asking a survey participant to rate their fitness level as strongly, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. So the higher you up, the more physically fit you consider yourself. The last type of variable then is what's called a count variable. And count variables are used for categorical variables. So again, if we're trying to just study the student population, there's 2 different types. There's undergraduates and graduate students. Those are 2 different categories, and then we can also categorize them by male and female. And the count then is just the number of students that fall within that category. So in 2011, the undergraduate male population was 8,320 students. So again, you just count up the number of observations that fall within each of those categories. But again, the main 2 types of variables are quantitative variables and categorical variables, and that's what we'll be focusing on for the major part of this class.